The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
On this episode of Farm Connections, travel with us to Kasota, Minnesota, where we join the Ginsel family to learn about the Green Star Initiative and the work that farmers are doing to improve water quality and conserve soil.
Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
Farm Connections on KSMQ is brought to you in part by PRIMROSE Retirement Communities in Austin and Mankato. PRIMROSE, a provider of independent and assisted living, is a proud sponsor of Farm Connections. PRIMROSE, this is living. Task AgriPlan Now is an employee benefit program that enables family farmers to take federal, state, and self-employment tax deductions on health insurance premiums and out-of-pocket expenses. AgriPlan Now is a proud partner of Farm Connections. Will Mahler, the Ag Attorney, has been representing dairy farms in Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin for more than 38 years. Will Mahler, the Ag Attorney's office is in Rochester, and Will, a proud partner of Farm Connections. Thanks, Will Mahler.
Welcome to the Ginsel farm near Kasota. Farm Connections joined up with John, and welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for coming.
John, you're going to tell us a little bit about what's happening on your farm in regards to water quality and the Green Star Initiative. So first, tell us a little bit about yourself and the farm, please.
Well, I'm a sixth-generation farmer in southern Minnesota here, and water quality is very important to us. We utilize and enjoy the same lakes as everybody else around here and enjoy water sports and everything. And so we really wanted to take a proactive role, and so that's what got us involved in the Green Star Farms initiative. And so with that, we're starting to do a lot more and to actually quantify the things that we're doing on our farm to help with water quality.
What causes you pride when you look at your farm?
I think for us, it really is just being a good member in the community and keeping a farm thriving that's been in the area since the 1860s. And I always look back on some of the farms that we run that have been farmed by my ancestors for 120 years and think of all the hard work that they've done throughout the years, and I really take a lot of pride in continuing that tradition.
120 years is a long time, John, and you also mentioned 1860. That's before the Civil War.
It is, and actually the initial farm that they purchased was from a Civil War vet, and so that's kind of the time range that they came. They were in Wisconsin for a short time, and then they've settled here, and so we're less than 3 miles from a lot of our family's original homesteads back at that time. So that's really exciting for me to still have that connection with the land, and nowadays that's getting harder and harder to find.
Well, if your family has farmed here this long, it must be what you'd call a sustainable farm?
I believe so. Looking through the history, I see that a lot of my great-grandfather, for example, they were very forward-thinking for their time as well. And they did things to make sure that they were doing the best they could on their soils. And of course, the technology is now caught up and the equipment is caught up where you can continue to do a better job. They didn't have all the tools necessarily back then like we do, and so things continue to change for the better, and I'm excited to be able to keep continuing on with that drive to seek out other innovative ways to improve.
John, you talked about tools. Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean, tools?
Well, for example, tools that give us an amazing amount of increased abilities are like GPS, georeferenced information. So now we can actually map each acre of our farm and find out exactly how many pounds of product should be put on every acre. We didn't have that capability in the past, so you may over-apply or under-apply in areas. And so that's one tool that we've been able to really utilize. Some of the equipment has become more refined that that we can come in season and apply nutrients when it's needed. And that's some pretty specialized equipment that just wasn't available 3-4 years ago. And so we continue to find some of those tools. One tool we've been using is an infrared sensor that can monitor chlorophyll content in the plant. And so we're actually monitoring the vigor and health of each plant and basing our nutrients on that health status.
What equipment carries that camera or monitoring equipment?
For about 8 years, we've been running it on the bar itself, so they're physically mounted to the bar. But there's issues with that, with covering a lot of ground. So we've recently switched to mounting it actually in aircraft, and we can fly. I've flown for many years, and so we can actually capture that by air and map out everything and bring it into the office and do that ahead of time. So it really streamlined it, and now we can get maps throughout the season rather than just once a year.
It sounds like you're using a lot of technology to make farming more efficient and more productive. Is that a safe statement?
It's a safe statement, and for us it's two parts. It's economical. We can use less product and use it more efficiently, and just from the environmental standpoint, you know, this is an area I care deeply about. You know, we've been here for so long. I want to do the best we can. So from an environmental standpoint, we can always continue to try and use less and apply it when it's needed and where it's needed.
Oftentimes we see data that shows how many more bushels farmers are producing with the same amount of nutrients and inputs. Have you got any feel for what that means?
We see it every year on our farm, the increased gains year after year, and it's amazing. You can really see how at the end of the day, the amount of pounds that we're getting off of every acre and the inputs used, it's a success story, I think, that's not getting told. It's just amazing how efficient a lot of, I think, involved in one study, less than 3 gallons of diesel per acre, and I know we probably use that more than that mowing on an annual basis. So there's a lot of things that are moving forward in that direction as far as the efficiencies.
What is the Green Star Initiative?
The Green Star Initiative takes the data on your farm and your practices, and you compile them on a list and you rank your practices, and then you have that verified by a third party, and it really allows you to see how you're doing. It allows you to benchmark your farm and what you're doing in your practices, what you could be doing better, and how those practices are going to help the environment and for water quality and that type of thing. So we wanted to get involved to make sure that there's not something that we're not addressing, and to be proactive.
Sounds like a really tall order and a big job.
It will be a challenge. There's things that we'd like to do, and logistically we're working on them, and things take time. The equipment, you just can't buy a new line of equipment every year, so you have to kind of phase into some things as you can afford the tools. But I think it's something we'd like to do, and the initiative is a great help in getting you going in the right direction.
Thank you very much, John.
Yeah. Thank you.
Jeremy, you've got some things to show us, but I want to hear about the company and the business you do.
Absolutely. My name is Jeremy Jeske. I work as a watershed education specialist with the Minnesota Agricultural Water Resource Center. We are a coalition of 22 farm organizations with 2 major missions, which is water quality research and education, and I fit in the education role, and the program that I work with primarily is the Green Star Farms Initiative.
This must be very important if you've got 22 organizations that A, agree on a common mission, and B, implement and move it forward. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. You know, the coalition started several years ago now, and all of the farm groups, just like every other segment of society, we all want the same things. We want clean water, we want healthy soils, we want healthy food, and that's what we're about.
Well, you have a big territory. Tell me what you do inside of that territory.
Certainly. As I mentioned earlier, my main role is working with our Green Star Farms Initiative, which is a program that we launched last year at Farm Fest. and it's a self-evaluation tool for farmers to evaluate their own conservation practices on their farms. And so the Gensel farm, we've met John earlier, and John is a participant in this, and the program has several main points that it addresses. One, for farmers like John, it helps them evaluate what they're doing, identify ways that they can continue to get better in terms of farm production and water quality protection. From our organizational standpoint, it helps us document all the good work that farmers are already doing that they never get credit for. And we'll see some examples of this here in a little bit. And then it also is a way for farmers in general to be proactive and show everyone else that we are committed to clean, safe water.
Well, what's an example of success from your work?
Well, part of my role then, we've got right now a little over 250 farms who have participated in the Green Star Farms initiative, and obviously we want a lot more than that, and so we're promoting that. But then of those 250, about 10% have requested third-party reviews. So I actually go out on the farms like John's, and we look over how they scored themselves from an environmental standpoint, and then we go out into the fields and we look at the actual practices that are in place. And so what is always really rewarding for me is just to get to see in practice what the farms are doing, what their plans are to keep getting better, and they're just doing so much good work that nobody knows about. And so I get a chance to see it firsthand, I get a chance to talk to people about it and share that story.
Do you ever find some examples that just stand out as, wow, look at what happened, we've got the data to back it up, we should model this and have others do it? Does that happen?
Well, one of the things that I think is really interesting is of all the farms that I've been on all over the state, every farm is managed differently. We've got different soil types, we've got different topographies, we've got different weather patterns, we've got different crop rotations. All of these factor in. So one of the things that I think is really key is there is no one right way to farm. Every farm has to manage it within their own system, and I see all these farms managing differently, but all with the similar goals in mind and all doing really good things. And I think that's key, in that we can't all do everything the same. We have to identify what works best on each of our individual farms.
Tremendous. What an individualized kind of program.
Absolutely. And then my role too, as I go through, you know, the farmers, they see their land every day, and sometimes it's nice to have that fresh set of eyes that might notice something, see something a little different, and just ask the question, well, have you thought about this? Or maybe you'd want to do this. And when I was out here on John's farm, he showed me all the good things he was doing already, showed me what plans he had for the future, and we talked about those things, and it's just my chance to interject a few other tips and things that they might listen to or might take some advice, and most of the time they already know what they're gonna be doing, and maybe I can help them take that next step.
Well, one big hot topic lately has been nitrate and water testing. Is your organization doing any work in that area?
Absolutely. You know, as I mentioned earlier, our farmers and our families and our kids, you know, we live on the land, we drink the water, and we want, you know, that same clean water that everyone else wants. And we've got farms like John and others that want to test their wells, their tile water. Maybe they've got ditches on their farms, they want to test that. And so one of the things we're offering, our organization, is free nitrate testing for all farmers at Farm Fest this year. If they want to bring water samples into our booth, we were in the AURI tent across from the forum tent, and they can get their water samples tested for free while they wait.
Tremendous value. Is that anonymous? Does the data used in other ways?
Great point. It's completely anonymous, just the way that they can get the results, and you know, we'll have a little map up where we can show where we're getting samples from, but mostly it's a free service that organizations can provide to farmers, and it's their own data, so we're not going to use it in any other way than we're letting them get that information for their own use and helping to interpret the results.
So if I'm a farmer and I think I'm doing a great job, I might use a nitrate test to substantiate that.
Absolutely. And for all the farms that I've talked to, and I'm the same way on my farm, I want to know what's in the water that might be leaving my farm. And so it's just a simple way to find that out.
If I'm a producer and I'm a little concerned, maybe somebody said you're a problem or you're causing a problem, would this be a tool I could use to find out where I'm at on that without incriminating myself?
Absolutely. You know, we are a coalition of farm organizations, so there's no government entity involved, there's no agency that looks at this. This is just simply us providing a test for the individual.
And let's say the farm wants to do, or the farmer wants to do something additional. You know, you've identified some things. Do you partner with other agencies, or are you where it starts and stops?
Well, what our Green Star Farms program is designed to do, again, is an educational program. So throughout the survey, which takes a farmer about 15 minutes to do this self-evaluation. As you go through it, if you identify areas where you say, you know what, there's some risk here and I'd like to do something about it, it's designed to direct you to those additional resources, whether that's, you know, there's cost share programs available, there's educational resources through the university or other avenues that can help you. Our staff and other professionals within the 22 members of MAWRC, if we can provide assistance, we do that as well.
Jeremy, thanks for telling us about your program and the work you do. Let's go meet John out at the terrace and visit a little bit about that.
Sounds good.
What are farmers like John doing to protect soil and improve water quality?
Well, John's got a number of practices in place already on his farm. He's got grass waterways in many places where they're needed. He's got a lot of residue cover left to keep that soil in place. And he's got a number of these farmable terraces that he put in place. And I'll let John explain how they work and why he chose to do that.
Yeah, so we chose to go with a farmable terrace because it doesn't affect a lot of our management style. So we can still plant around it. There's not a lot of work that needs to be done after they're installed. And what we simply did here is we changed the grade, so we're holding water back and then taking it down via tile. So we don't have that surface erosion or any soil movement going downhill. As you can see, this is some pretty steep grading soils that we needed to do something to hold the water back and slow it down as it moves down the drainage system.
And how's it working?
It's working great. We've had to do very little work since we installed the system up to, I think, 10 years ago. So it's very light on as far as upkeep and maintenance, and it works great. And where we're sitting here, you can see a pretty good example of how we're holding so much residue back with our tillage processes. So here's an example of last year's crop. All the residue remains on the soil until the new crop has enough root structure to hold the soil in place. So that's another tool that we've been trying to implement to keep water. Every time water hits any of this residue, it slows down. That's another tool that can be used.
And we had some big rains down here, 4 or 5 inch rains, and we didn't see any soil loss on things like this, so they really do work.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, a 5-inch rain in 3-4 hours, and we don't see any soil movement downstream of this terrace.
And I'm noticing last year's corn crop is still hanging onto the soil.
It's still hanging onto the soil. The root structure does well. Soybeans don't have quite the root structure that corn does, but it definitely, the residue from last year's corn crop is still providing a lot of value to us for soil structure this current year.
Tell us about this terrace. It looks like you've built up the soil and then created a mini watershed in back of the terrace. Is that an accurate statement?
So we had a lot of upland acres, and so all that water naturally flowed due to the contour of the land to this area into a narrow cut into the soil. And so what we were able to do here is bring in heavy equipment, build up this terrace so we can hold it here, and now it's released in a timely fashion with this sized pipe in the ground. So it does slow it down, and it takes it away at a certain speed so that we're not overloading the systems downstream as well. When that 5-inch rain came, this was nearly flooded, but it still meters down quickly enough that we, in theory, don't lose the crop here, and we didn't this year with that 5-inch rain.
So here's an example of you using tile to actually slow down what normally would have happened without
Correct.
man helping out.
Right. If this would have been surface erosion, it would have been down in that creek in 2 hours. Now with the ability here, it held it here for probably a day and a half up on this landscape before it finally caught up and got downstream.
Very interesting. And what other kinds of practices or things are you two working on?
Well, the other thing, as we did the walkover with John's farm, we just looked at all aspects of conservation. So the soil, the water, we look at the farm site, or the things we can do there to protect and be up to code and everything like that. And so John and his family are doing a great job. And the thing that I like is that I get to learn how these practices work on John's farm, and if I'm at another farm, what they're thinking of doing something like this, I can tell them I know where this is working, and we might see more of this adopted in other areas.
John, how are you going to use Jeremy and other people to help make your goals?
Some of it is just the accountability. So if you know that you're getting involved in a system where you have a little accountability, and you can say what you'd like, but let's actually quantify that and make sure that it is accurate. And so that's helpful, and to have that third-party review, there's a lot of feedback, there's things that I might not see, and you bring that outside perspective in, and there's a lot of value in that. And like he says, he can bring up other things that are working well in his experience, what he's seen and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of added value for me as a grower to kind of make that connection.
Well, you're on the right track. I encourage you to keep both working at it.
We'll try.
Good job.
Thanks, Dan.
Well, Angela, this is a beautiful farm, and you have some history to it also.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that history.
And I've loved living on the farm. Growing up here has been such an awesome opportunity for me, and just being in that lifestyle has been such a treat, I think, and a very unique experience as well.
Well, while it was a treat and you were growing up here, did you have to do any work?
Well, yes, absolutely. Anything from bean walking to washing and waxing tractors to just maintaining the yard or any tasks around.
And so high school graduation came and then things changed for you?
Yeah, after high school graduation, education is very important to me, so I went up to College of St. Benedict, St. John's University, where I got my degree in sociology and a Spanish minor. And had been working in the cities after that for a few years. I realized that, for example, during the fall season when harvest was going on, I actually ended up taking off from work a few days a week actually, so I could come down and help out. I would do it every weekend, and finally in spring, this current spring, a good opportunity came along where I could make that transition, where I realized I wanted to be back here. This was worthwhile for me, and I saw myself really prospering here. So I came back to the farm and left my other position, and I've been working full-time since.
Does it feel like the right place?
It feels great. It feels great. It's always busy, always something to do. Get to work outside and get to be, steward of the land, so I can't complain. I've gotten a few responses, and when I tell people, hey, I'm a farmer, they say, oh, aren't you college educated? What are you doing out here? And I think it's, oftentimes it's kind of a misconception. People think of the farming lifestyle as just the simple life. Going back in the field a few days and working here and there, but it's really such an integrative process that you have no idea how really involved and the skills it takes to thrive here.
Well, it looks like you're doing a great job, and I know you're concerned about the farm and involved with it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Dan.
Terry Gensel, this is a beautiful farm.
Oh, thank you.
And Gensel Family Farms has some history. It goes back a long time, I understand. How far?
1856, I think.
A long time.
Yes.
Tell us about your farm. Why are you proud of it?
It's just something we've been working at for a lifetime, actually. I grew up, my dad was a farmer, approximately 200 acres, just, kind of the way the family farms were at that point. And then it just seemed kind of natural to just keep trying to go on with that process. I loved the lifestyle and working outside, making things grow.
Well, it sounds like you have a vision of this being a family farm going into the future.
Yeah, that's what my wish is, and it seems to be going in that direction.
Well, today we're talking a little bit about sustainability, water quality, soil quality, and also keeping the soil where it belongs. How does that tie into this being a successful and sustainable farm?
Well, that's our main goal. If you can just picture, when my relatives were back there 100 years ago, it seems like a long time, but hopefully this farm will be producing in 100 years from now, and I want the soil to be fully as good as it is when I touched it. So we're doing everything we can to promote it, keep it from washing down the hillsides, and just generally keeping it very productive and not letting it erode. So we try to be efficient with whatever we put down on the field to make sure it stays on the field and not end up where we don't want it. I've been a farmer about 37, 38 years. I feel it's just natural just to kind of back down from some of the major planning, and I just work at kind of keeping the day-to-day things going around here, because there's a lot of just general maintenance throughout, if it's farm machinery or the grain moving equipment. And yeah, as far as doing a meeting with bankers, meeting with the seed salesmen, the insurance people, and the FSA office, my son's been taking that over the last few years, and I'm just fine, you know, just letting somebody else take that role. So.
But you're still mentoring, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm there every day.
Terry, someone else in the family has joined us. Can you introduce her, please?
Yeah, this is Sarah, my daughter-in-law, Jonathan's wife. She's the one that we call any time of the evening, you know, 10 o'clock at night, and she helps us move the farm equipment around and kind of the gopher parts. So she keeps us going.
Everybody's part of the family business, it sounds like. Well, Sarah, thanks for joining us. And audience of Farm Connections, thanks for joining us, and please tune in next time for Farm Connections.